From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. The National Party conventions are over. The candidate field is official for the fall presidential campaign. What impact did the conventions have? What lies ahead in this always unpredictable year of 2020? Last week, we spoke with Mary Mancini, the chairman of the Tennessee Democratic Party, about all these matters. We hope to do the same this week with the Tennessee Republican Party. However, no active party leader made themselves available for an interview, even though we had numerous efforts to try to set up a time for them to come talk with us. We are pleased to have former Tennessee State Republican Party chair and noted GOP consultant Chip Saltzman as our guest to join us on Inside Politics this week. Chip, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Good to be with you, Pat. I think it's better to have a has-been on than it never was, so I'm happy to join you.
You're a veteran of a lot of these conventions. Did you attend the convention, and for the first time, did you like the format? Did you see it in Charlotte, Jacksonville, Washington, or just on your couch at home?
Well, so I watched most of it from my couch at home. We had a newborn baby about 3 weeks, so there wasn't a whole lot of traveling back and forth to all the convention sites. First convention we missed since '96. But interesting, I think there were some parts that I think actually were better like this. And I think obviously the excitement and the energy, certainly both parties missed that.
Now, both parties had to scramble because they had to go to a whole virtual format for the most part. The Republicans probably had to do more scrambling because originally they were going to be in Charlotte, then they were going to be in Jacksonville. Finally, most of it wound up being in Washington. This was pretty closely stage managed by the president, it appears. His family appeared all 4 nights, and he appeared all 4 nights. That's not traditional. Was it too much Trump?
There is nothing traditional about this president, Pat. And I think what we've learned to understand is kind of as we go through this and say we've never seen that before, we've never had that happen before. I think that's kind of the deal for President Trump. Very non-traditional. Actually, I think it works. I think it works for this president. I think it works for this administration. And let me tell you why. Like we saw with Ivanka last night, there's nobody that can tell the story of the accomplishments of the president like the daughter who's been with him the whole time, and it humanizes them, and it talks about being right there. And I think Ivanka did a great job kind of talking about the accomplishments over the last 4 years, and a family member can do that almost better than anybody else.
Many of the GOP speeches were given in a beautiful but empty auditorium on a stage that was filled with flags. It looked nice and it seemed to move pretty well, but appearing over and over again, and obviously with no cloud or applause, did you find it to be a little bit stale? The Democrats did seem to move around some to more locations, although they were still empty as well.
Yeah, obviously big challenge. I think the Republicans did a pretty good job. Look, I give credit to both parties. Big challenges going into something we've never done before. I think the Republicans did a good job of adding more regular people telling their stories, which I think had some great impacts when we go back and look at it. Certainly last night with Lisa Johnson and then Maximo, who was talking about his experience with Cuba, and then the St. Louis police chief widow. There were some powerful stories that a politician, an elected official, can't tell that story. And there were some moments during that convention that I was on the couch and I was teary-eyed through the whole speech.
The president and Mike Pence were both renominated within the first hours of the convention. That actually did happen in Charlotte, as I understand it. The Democrats put a little bit more stage production into that. They had vignettes from all 50 states and the territories to put up when they did the nominations. Did the Republicans just not get a chance to do that because they were so late putting their situation together?
I think they didn't know where they were going to go. Look, I always like to say nice things about Democrats when they do things right. Doesn't happen often, but I thought their production of their roll call was very good. Being a party guy, I get excited about the roll call. I like to watch it. I like to see who's talking. The Democrats' production was well done. Give them credit for that. And I think some of it on our side was we didn't know we were going to be in Charlotte. Then we know we were going to be in Jacksonville. So what they did worked. It was the one thing the convention's supposed to do, which is have a roll call of states to nominate the president, vice president.
The Republicans complained that the Democrats criticized the president a lot, but didn't say what they were going to do, what their agenda was. But the Republicans didn't even debate or adopt their own platform for this year. They just took the 2016 platform and put it again. They basically said whatever the president Trump's for, we're for too. But the 2016 platform for the Republicans doesn't even have things in there like the economy, the current economy anyway, and nothing about COVID-19. So doesn't the public need to know what the Republican Party stands for and have a real platform for this year?
You know, it's interesting to say that. So usually those platforms are done the week before. Those are actually done in committees. There's hours and hours of delegates from across the country that talk about those platforms. Obviously, with the situation that we had, that didn't happen. The delegates, not even all the delegates were in Charlotte, just a small group from each state. So they didn't have a chance to negotiate or talk about the platform this year. So I think they did what they needed to do, which say the 16 platform works. The president is the same platform. Not much has changed. He's still pro-life. He's still pro-Second Amendment. He's still for lower taxes. I think the COVID response has been pretty incredible from this administration and this president, catching it early on with the travel ban to China, travel ban to Europe. Hopefully we'll get through this by the end of the year. But I think both parties had a challenge doing that, and each one kind of took a different route. I think both were okay.
In their convention, the Democrats showcased their living former presidents and their nominees. There was none of that at the GOP convention. In fact, I don't think any of the previous nominees or presidents even attended this convention. Is that a definitive sign that the Republican Party is really now the party of Trump?
The party always is the party of whoever the president is. Donald Trump's the president, he's the nominee, and it's the Trump party going into the 2020 election. And it'll be the Trump party until 2024 when we nominate somebody else.
President Trump criticized the Democrats as having the darkest convention ever, but looking over what happened during the Republican convention, don't all parties pretty much put the other side in apocalyptic, end of the world kind of terms? I mean, the president in his speech said that nobody's going to be safe in their own homes if Joe Biden's president. And a lot of your speakers were looking angrily and almost shouting into the camera a couple of times. That's not the way you do it virtually, is it? I mean, don't you teach your candidates not to shout or not just read the teleprompter? You want to have a conversation, particularly if it's virtual.
If that was 30,000 people in the arena, I think some of those speeches would have been received a little better. Harder to get that emotion level up when it's an empty speech. But Pat, what you're telling me is that Democrats criticize Republicans in their convention and Republicans criticize Democrats in their conventions. I'm shocked.
A shock. The usual suspects.
That's what they do. But I will say this. I think the Republicans did a great job on individual, regular people telling their story, that emotional story. And I think that really matters going into the convention, especially because, remember, these conventions are about two audiences. The base, get them excited to go out there and work and door knock and make phone calls and all the things for the ticket, the nominee, and everybody else down the ballot. And that small group of independent swing voters that haven't made their decision yet, I think those individual stories about how the Trump administration, President Trump, Vice President Pence have affected their lives, I think those were very powerful stories and could move some people.
Chip Saltzman, former state Republican Party chair for Tennessee, and also a noted GOP consultant, is our guest on Inside Politics. We're talking about the recently concluded national party conventions. Back to continue our conversation with Chip after you watch these messages.